Hi, it's Monique Alvarez, and we are back for another roundtable discussion on why the world is so anxious, worried, and depressed, and it's not what you think. So I'm super excited to have Jesse, Maria, and Donica with me. We're going to be talking about our own experiences of when we have had these present in our life and really what was causing it. And our intention in this discussion is actually to get real about what's going on, because current therapies, medications, all of the quote unquote solutions, they're obviously not helping, right? Things aren't getting better, they're getting worse. And I feel like it's because we're all sort of being put in the corner and being held up by our collar, and we're being asked to get real and to be ourselves. So ladies, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So I said in the beginning, there's no right or wrong answers. There's only your experience. Yeah. So no, your experience can't be wrong. And I think having lots of different voices and perspectives is what helps people and what opens up more conversations, because that's what we want to do. We want to open up more conversations. Something I found very fascinating when I did a post on social media as to why, like, I don't know, 50% of millennials are in therapy. And many millennials reached out to me and said this, and it stung. And you know what they said? I don't have anyone else I can talk to. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. How on earth are we living in a society where you have parents and grandparents, you have teachers, mentors, pastors, and you have no one to talk to but a perfect stranger that you pay money to? It's fascinating to me the way our society is going. Not a single friend in the world to feel completely alone. So let's dive into this. So just the way you're arranged on my screen, so it helps me keep track. We'll start with Jesse. So I would love each of us to share a time when we felt anxious, depressed, worried, all of those things that we try to pop a pill for or find a Band-Aid for. When you experienced this and what was actually causing it. So Jesse, I'm gonna put you on the spot, and you're gonna kick us off.
Thank you. This is exactly my story. I found myself in postpartum depression when I was about 30 something, and did all the things that Western society tells us to do. I went to therapy. I took antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication, and went to more therapy and paid people to listen to me bitch and moan and blame other people. And it just, it wasn't working, right? I got to the point where I was able to like function and still enjoy my kids a little bit. I mean, that was when it really hit me that I was depressed, when I couldn't even read a bedtime story to my kids without crying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think a lot of moms can relate to this, Jesse, and it's the part about motherhood that no one talks about, right? It's all made to be very glamorous, and it's like, this is the reality. You're going to get a child. You're going to feel like you have no idea what the heck you're doing. You're going to be sleep deprived. You're going to be recovering physically, mentally, emotionally. Oh, by the way, all the other things in your life are going to keep going. Good luck to you.
Yeah. And everyone just expects you to put on a happy face and push through it. And that's how I grew up, was, let's not tell anybody what our problems are. Let's just all dress nice and go to the party and just put on a happy face, right? And so that's what I was trained to do. And so that's what I tried to do until I just couldn't anymore. Yeah.
Maria, what about you?
Yeah, I think for me, I've had many moments, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. So I do believe in therapy, but I do believe our field needs to pivot really quickly to meet the needs of this mental health crisis. And I was able to experience that personally. It was right during the pandemic, and I've had many points in my life where I had dealt with pretty severe depression, but it was a combination of perimenopause. My kids were like moving towards empty nest. And there was all these different factors that brought me to really my lowest point with my depression. And I tried a new treatment called ketamine assisted psychotherapy, where I had a dissociative experience and was able to see clearly what I needed to do to make changes in my life to get out of the depression. And for me, that meant leaving a marriage of 29 years, which I filed for divorce in July. And it was a very painful decision to make. But I felt that at that point, and this happens a lot when kids get older, you're looking and realizing, like, we got married at 23, we met at 19, but does that mean that our soul's purpose is to stay together for the rest of our lives? And for me, I realized that I needed to make that change in order to move out of some of the feelings that were coming up. And even though it's been the hardest year of my life, it's been one of the most growth oriented years. And I have just realized that sometimes we have to break down in order to break through. Like, I had to go to that point of depression in order to really see what I had to do to make changes that were going to help me break through to this place that I'm in now, which I'm almost off all my medications, which is a whole journey in and of itself. But I'm doing work that I love. I'm just thriving in many different ways because of that decision.
Yeah, and Maria, I just want to say how much I appreciate you. You know, we met. I don't even know how we met, actually, through some magic of the internet.
Yeah.
And many therapists are unwilling to say, we've got to evolve, we've got to pivot, we've got to look deeper. And you were willing to say, yes, I've done this. This has been my career. And I understand how we used everything we could use. And let's innovate. Let's explore what else is possible.
Yes. And
So
I'm super excited about this, trajectory of moving towards psychedelics, only because they're getting to the root issues.
Yep.
And that's what people need to heal. And we're on this path of still being kind of in this medication mindset, which is more just numbing people to manage basically living in survival mode. And
Yes.
so that's part of the purpose of my podcast. I'm pivoting right now to Catalyst for Healing Mental Health. And we're going to talk about innovative and integrated breakthroughs, because I think the field is evolving and shifting, but not quite quick enough. And so I want to help people understand what options there are to move. Because I was in therapy for 20 years. I mean, it wasn't like I was doing the work and I needed that and it was helping me grow. But this type of therapy, like, literally shifted my entire trajectory.
Yes, we can do it way faster now.
Yeah.
Donica, what about you?
Well, I would just first say which one. Which one? Nice to meet you, Miss Maria. I met Jesse already, and you are an ally for women, Monique, and I really appreciate you. I appreciate the connection. I can brag on you all day. That's not the topic. When you said what have you been anxious for? My faith started kicking in my mind and start saying, well, but that's not what we're taught. We're taught, don't be anxious about anything, right? Cast our cares on him. And I rely heavily on my faith and scriptures. I'm not downplaying it. But that's the first things that started coming to my mind. But when you said, what has made you anxious? I was like, okay, this happened to me, this happened to me. What am I going to say for real? I've had many things that have occurred in my life. But I will say the one thing that I feel like that speaks to women, I don't know if you've ever heard this term, like in social media, they say, life is lifing. Last year, I hope I don't cry. Last year, my son was graduating from high school, and I was so excited about that. And everything that comes with it, running a ministry, this is social media, so I won't tell as much of his story. But when a teenager is growing up, they got their own mind about how they're going to do things, right? So, but my mind is, we graduated from high school. And so, by God's grace, I for real, if I could jump up and start running right now, I would. We made it to the finish line. And I tell anybody and everybody for that point in my life with my son who's 19 years old right now, graduating high school. He chose the path to go into electrical program, not directly to college. Um, I told my son, I don't care if you're turning off the lights in that building, you're graduating. And one day I started, my heart was beating really fast and stuff like that. I was like, I told my twin, I said, my heart's beating fast. It was graduation party day and his graduation party. I said, after the party, I got to go to the ER. My heart's beating fast. And she was like, no, we're going to go right now. Okay, we're going to go to the ER, but how long y'all going to take? Because I got a party. And they said, well, we checked your heart and everything. Are you having any stress? No, but I was. And at that moment, they told me that I had anxiety. They diagnosed me in the ER with anxiety and said, you're having panic attacks. And from that moment, that was my first time having it, but it wasn't my last time. And from that episode of being a mom, running a nonprofit organization, having adult children, having grandchildren, having the demands of life, and I have adult children. I was telling Miss Jessie yesterday, because my kids are grown and on their own doesn't mean that they don't need me. Can you go here? Can you go there? And so I had an episode at work, working remotely from home. I had a panic attack. I got off the phone and I called my job. I said, I can't be here. Something's wrong with me. And over the course of months, I did not work. I would say my job was good to me, but they was like, hey, you got to come back to work. And I was like, I can't do it. I was not better, but I got a chance to um, identify within myself. It's not like one thing, When I was growing up, my mother had issues. My dad died when I was 9. In my marriage, there are some things that have happened. But sometimes being a wife, being a mom, being a grandmom, I did not take time for myself. Even though I said I was that year that I was going to take time for myself, it caught up with me. So when you say, Monique, when was the time? I would say for women, sometimes I'll speak for myself. When was there not a time that I didn't have to do more for myself, didn't have to be honest with myself? And I rejected it. I know Miss Maria is a therapist, but when they said you have anxiety, I'm not doing that. What? No, I don't. But it happened again. And so I had to accept it. And I'm going to be transparent. Have I been doing everything that I need to for myself? No. Because every week I say, I'm not going to work this week. And then I look at my calendar. Oh my, I'm doing something every day. And so we have to stop. And I went to therapy and then I realized I wasn't using my coping tools. So I think my answer would be, when wasn't there a time? And I would have to do better with accepting what it is and moving through it differently.
That's a real answer, Donica. I appreciate that. There's so many elements in life that are coming at us at the same time, and I think you articulated it perfectly.
And then not being able to be honest about it. Miss Maria said that, or you said, Miss Monique, that millennials said they had to go to therapy because they didn't have anybody to talk to. Sometimes you might have somebody to talk to, but they don't want you to be honest.
That's exactly what I thought, Donica. It's not that you don't have someone to talk to, it's that you don't want to get real with the people that are in your life. It's hard to tell the truth about what is actually going on with us, because it might not reflect well on me in this moment. And dealing with that can be very uncomfortable, Yeah. So as you all were talking, the thing that came up for me, kind of like you, Donica, I remember, I don't know, it might've been 10 o'clock in the morning, and I found myself laying in my son's bed with the Spider-Man comforter on me. And my heart, it just felt like it was going to explode. It was coming out of my chest. And experiencing the sensations I'd never had before. And it's like, oh, this is a panic attack, or this is anxiety, because it's not something I ever had before. And I don't know any other way to describe it. There was a lot of things that went through my mind. I was going through changes here and changes there, and probably perimenopause knocking at my door. But what I can say now, looking back, what I had in that moment was a realization that someone in my life was gunning for me. Someone that I thought I could trust, who was supporting me, who was on my team. They were actually the enemy in my camp. And I realized it. And that was my mom. And it was this terrifying moment of, holy shit, she knows me maybe better than anyone. And so she can fuck with my life in a way that no one else can. Mm-hmm. And admitting that and realizing that, and then figuring out what I was going to do next, it came, it physically started impacting me. It started mentally impacting me. And these are the things that I didn't want to navigate. I didn't want to have to look at. I didn't want to have to approach. But I also was aware that if I don't become the strongest version of myself, life as I know it will be over. Like, I had to choose to tap into another bigger, stronger version of myself, because I felt like I was in the fight of my life. And Maria, you mentioned it. And what I found was I grew up in a way where, I didn't drink alcohol. I didn't do drugs. Even as a teenager, I didn't rebel. I didn't run around with boys. I don't drink coffee. Like, my husband often jokes, I kind of live like a Mormon, even though I'm not part of the church. And so I had heard of psychedelics. I had heard that people were using this, but I sort of had the same approach or perspective toward them like I would any of the other things. I was very judgmental. It was like, that's for other people. I don't do that, right? And I had a dream, and the mushrooms were talking to me, and they were telling me videos to watch on YouTube and telling me what I needed to do. And when I had that experience, I took Derek with me. I was like, hey, listen, we're going to do this thing. And he goes, who on earth are you? Like, you might want to have a shot of tequila before you go all the way over to mushrooms, And we went on this experience together. And what I learned in that, it was like, I got to see the truest version of me without all the layers of life. And I got to find that courageous, beautiful, perfectly whole person. And when I came back into this reality, I could navigate it one step at a time. It doesn't mean it isn't hard, but I could navigate it with clarity. And I think that these are the things that, we are evolving. I mean, if you would have told me I was going to do that, I'd have told you not a chance. I don't do that. I'm better than that. Right. And that's the thing that life does. It takes us on this journey. All right, Jesse, what's a tool? I cued you in here. What's a tool that has helped you personally in those times when life felt bigger than you, when what you were facing felt like too much? What's a tool, a practice, something like this that has personally helped you?
Without a doubt, movement, dancing, but not the dancing that I did in high school with a routine and following a teacher, but the kind where you close your eyes and just listen to the music and just let your body do what your body wants to do, because it has so much wisdom. And I really learned how to let go of the stories of my life when I was in movement, when I was just dropping in. And the way you described your mushroom journey is a lot like how I feel when I'm moving my body and closing my eyes and just listening to music. And things come up that I didn't even know were there. Anger, tears, wanting to just rip things apart, or just wanting to curl into a ball and just hold myself. It's just the whole rainbow of the human experience can happen in 30 minutes if you have the right, impetus, the right move, so yeah, movement for sure has been my go-to for really getting through those tough times.
I love that. And I love that you're sharing that with others as well. Maria, what's a tool that's helped you?
Well, there's a couple that I'm thinking of, but I appreciate you sharing about your mushroom journey. I have done 3 guided journeys with psilocybin, and they have been the most transformative, life-changing experiences for me personally. The research is out there now. I mean, we're seeing it equivalent to like 4 to 6 years of therapy in 4 to 6 hours. And people are breaking through depression, anxiety, making these life shifts like never before. So that's why you and I have aligned, because we're both really passionate about these medicines getting legalized and getting the word out there. What they are right now in Colorado and Oregon, but there's a backlog to get them legalized in other states. But so that for me has been transformative as well. The other thing that came to mind immediately was a support system, because you mentioned, I mean, loneliness, I think, is by far one of the number one things that keep people trapped in mental illness, because we all need social support. We need people that are listening and there for us during the hard times. And for me this year, going through a divorce is very clarifying about who the people are that are really there for you. And one of the things, I am an empath and a highly sensitive person. And one of the things I started to realize was that I didn't have a lot of the right people in my life to support me that really got, the level of processing that I needed in a friendship to give me that right support. I mean, when you're going through a lot of trauma and change, you have to be real about it. Like, you can't not, because you're falling apart all the time. And so it was kind of a beautiful thing in a way, because I was able to see like, wow, these are the people that are really my people. And I was able to build and add some new people to that mix and like really find my tribe this year. And that is so powerful when it comes to good mental health, is feeling like you have a community to turn to. So anyway, that, and then the other thing I'd add real quick is yoga. For me, having a yoga practice has been phenomenal in terms of getting connected with my body, and movement, like you were saying, Jesse, is so powerful, and breath and being in the moment. And so those are the 3 things for me this year that have really been life-changing.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Donica, what about for you? What tools or practices have helped you the most? Oh, hold on. I want you to unmute yourself.
I would first backtrack just a little bit and say that for me, that I know that, is it okay? Can you hear me? For myself, when I was going through an episode in my life, I'm just talking about one specific thing in my marriage, that when we talk about tools, I got to be honest about the other things too, that I was having rage and anger and sadness and crying. And I always tell the story, I was acting foolish in front of my kids. I was searching and seeking and hoping, and I had a pain like none other. People listened, but they couldn't help me. Why is she acting like that? It's not a big deal. People, what? Men cheat. What? I couldn't function at work. I cried all day. One day in my bed, I asked God to help me. And in the quiet in my room, he said, I will. And I was telling just yesterday, I didn't hear a voice. Not one nobody saying I need medication, but it was a quietness in my heart. But it also made me open to what he was going to do for me and with that experience. So I started looking, what was the answer going to be? And to be honest, the answer came through research because I wanted to know, why am I feeling like this? I don't want to feel like this. I'm going to go to work. I was at work. I was not doing my job. I was sitting in my office crying all day. I was not functioning. I met people in public. Everybody was happening to me. So if someone said, you're telling all your business, I was telling anybody that would listen because I was hurting so bad. But when I prayed and I asked God, and He said He would help me, the answer came in many ways. I started going on the internet and looking up. The Lord showed me I was having an emotional breakdown. It was my emotions. You think you feel, and I was feeling a lot of things. So it was research that helped me. First, I prayed, and then God let me navigate through reading the Bible, studying, literally learning about emotional intelligence. And I went to a support group um, so that I could be able to share. You could say what you want to say for 5 minutes. Nobody answered you back. Nobody said you should do this or you should do that. It was just a way for me to just get it out. I went to therapy twice. I talked to my spiritual mom. My mom is deceased. My mom has been there for almost 20 years. So God gave me a lady in my life that I could talk to. She loves me and she don't have to. You know, she's no blood relationship, but she loves me like I'm her own. And so I didn't have one tool. I had many. It started with my faith. It started with study, support group, and sharing it with other people.
Mm. I love how you said, after you lost your mom, God gave you another mom. She didn't have to love you, but she does. She don't have to be there for you, but she is. I experienced that in the last year as well. Two women stepped into my life, and they didn't have to, and they blow up my phone every day. Do you have any showings? How's the house going? Do you need us to pick up the boys? Do you need eggs? I mean, just like a mom, and it's such a huge blessing. I mentioned one of the tools, the one I was too good for, but I found that another tool that's helped me over and over and over when I lost my daughter, when I went through this challenging time with my mom, whatever comes up, what I find is I sort of fell into it because I needed something to sort of channel all of this into, all of this angst into. And I remember one day I was dealing with the loss of my daughter. The first year was one thing. Second year is when it became real. Because first year was sort of like my mind was still in this it was still in denial, right? So year two is when it hit me in the face. And we were living in New Orleans. And I remember this one morning, I couldn't be in the house. I couldn't look at Derek. I couldn't look at the boys because I couldn't pretend anymore. It was just like, oh, I'm gonna completely unravel in front of everyone. And so I just put on a pair of tennis shoes and I walked out the door. And I walked and I walked and I walked and I walked and I walked. And I had my watch on. So I got to 6 miles. And at 6 miles, I started feeling relief. Mm-hmm. And I walked and then I turned around and I walked that whole way home. And I felt relief. I felt like it was not stuck inside of me, that it was somehow moving, and that felt better than whatever was going on before. And so every single morning I committed to that. I just put my shoes on. I told everyone I love them. I'm going to go walk. And I walked 6 to 12 miles a day. And when I was going through the situation here with my mom, it didn't matter if it was a blizzard. It didn't matter if it was raining. It didn't matter if it was hot. It didn't matter if it was cold. I put my shoes on and I walked and I walked and I walked. And what I found for me personally, the 6 mile mark is sort of the minimum of when I could get through all the thoughts that were flying through my mind, all the emotions that were running through me, all of the anger, all of the frustration, all of the grief, the sadness, the what the fuck, it could finally begin to organize. And a couple of years ago, I went to a Joe Dispenza event, and I'm a big fan of his work and his books and all of this. There was a day at this event in Denver where he literally showed a visual on that giant screen of what it looks like when your brain and your heart, your mind and your heart come into some sort of pattern and coherence. And he showed this visual of the brain waves of someone who's, stressed and anxious and dealing with grief and all the things. And then what begins to happen, whether it's through meditation or movement or prayer or the presence and support of a friend. And he could visually see what was happening. And right then I got it. That's what the walking would do for me. And Donica, like you, many times I have literally said, God, if you want me to be here, I need your help. Plain and simple. Because otherwise I am not going to be able to do this. This is maxing out my ability to deal, whether it's the loss of a child, the loss of a mother who's still alive, whatever it is. If you want me here, you got to help me. And I don't care what it looks like, but I need actual real help that matters in this world. And I think that's part of it too, is getting real with God. Whatever someone believes in, I'm just going to say, if you don't believe in something bigger than you, you're fucked, right? We're sunk. And that's also what I think all of this is about, is realizing if you can't believe in God, if you can't believe that there is a bigger power, a bigger source of love and strength than you, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Because we're all at the end of all of our trying. And we have a perspective that's this narrow, right? And it's being able to step out of this and see a bigger picture, be a bigger reason for being here and for what we go through as human beings. I so appreciate your ladies' honest answers. I want to ask you one more question before we wrap this up. Who have you realized you actually are through your darkest times, through your most challenging times? What's something you've learned about yourself? What have you discovered? Who are you really? Jesse, we'll start with you.
That's a big one. You just kind of segued in for me, this finding that something bigger than myself was the key to my healing journey. And I didn't grow up religious. I was brought up Jewish, but I didn't have a real good relationship with that something outside of myself. And it was numerology and soul contracts that opened my eyes to the possibility that maybe my life wasn't random. All those tools we have, like human design and astrology and all of those things, for me, were the portal into this, there's something bigger happening here. And my soul contract, when I found out what my purpose was, the number was the 10. It was to be the walking, talking expression of my true self with every breath and every step. And as much as that might sound super woo-woo and intangible, it really just became this guiding light of, wait, that's all I'm supposed to do is just be my true self? Really? That's it? That's my purpose? But over the years, just going back to that and remembering really who I was when I was a little child. I was a leader. I was a teacher. I was a healer. I was a good friend, a compassionate person. I wasn't caught up in the drama of everybody else's stuff. I was a light. I was the one who said, come with me. I choreographed a dance for my 5th grade PE class. And my mom made these t-shirts so we could all look the same for the performance with like puffy paint. Remember that sparkly puffy paint? To the song Lean on Me. Lean on me, you know. I choreographed that for my 5th grade class, and every single girl in the class was a part of it. No one was excluded, which, you know, there's a lot of drama with girls. So that was different. And I just, when I did my healing journey, I just kept going back to that little girl, that 10-year-old little girl. That's who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And that's who I'm like, that's who I'm using to kind of guide me into remembering the leader that I want to, that I am and that I'm being, right? And so, yeah. Yeah.
It's beautiful, Jessie. Maria, what about for you?
Yeah, well, I resonate with some of what you're saying, Jessie. I mean, I love, because for me, hitting the bottom, and I mean, for me, when I am in my worst depression, and I'm very suicidal, and I can become just all those thoughts of harming myself can overtake, but they originate from like all the self-loathing, like beating myself up for so many things. And that was a powerful turning point in some of these ketamine journeys and in the psilocybin journeys where, and I've always had a strong faith and belief in God, but I have had some religious trauma. So I'm working out what that looks like in a healthy way for me. But my faith has always gotten me through all of those times. But it was this piece that you're talking about, Jessie, where I saw myself as a little girl, and I saw all these things that had happened to me to shape, you know, the ways I had turned things on myself, and to shape all of that self-loathing and where it came from. I was able to see it, and I was able to just look at her and who she really was, and to go, I was, like you were saying, I mean, when you're a child, you have all these talents and you have all these gifts. And I thought about my own children and how that's what I would see. It's like, yeah, they struggled with these things, but it's like, you want them to live out their purpose on this lifetime. And I started wanting that for myself, and I started healing her. And I finally saw, because I had really believed that I was weak. There's something about dealing with depression where you see yourself as a weak person. And I had seen all the hard things that I'd gone through, and I finally saw how strong I was. And that shift has really changed how I show up in the world, because it's like, no, I really am strong. And I've really been able to heal these things I never thought I would heal from. Like, I thought this was going to be with me forever. This is who I am forever. And that's what I'm excited to share with the world. Kind of like you're saying, Jessie, it's like the experience of deeply owning your purpose, and then believing that, you know, this is what God has for you, and wanting to step into that. That's been my journey this year. And I mean, even just taking the podcast, for example, which I started a year ago, I had a vision in one of my ketamine journeys where it said, you need to do a podcast. And I was like, no. Like, I am the type of person that like hides. I don't do public speaking. Like, I was at that point like a shell of who I am, because I was living in this space where I was very small. And a few months later, this doctor asked me to be on his, as a co-host for a podcast around the ketamine therapy. And I was like, okay, that must be a sign. But I was terrified. I mean, it's like, this has not come naturally for me. But the more I was healing these parts of me, the confidence grew that this is what I need to step into. And so anyway, it's, yeah, all those things I just really deeply resonate.
Thank you, Maria. Donica, who have you realized that you are?
I am Donica, and I love that. I am Donica, and I have a unique name. So there's Donicas in the world. I'm not the only one. But as Donica, I am resilient, loyal, compassionate. I am committed. And that's not attached to anything else. That's just within me. I believe in myself. I I'm not afraid to try. I'm not perfect. Life is gonna life, but I'm gonna keep going. So I think that, um, and as being Donica, um, unashamed about her and having to step out in the arena, uh, trying to share myself with the world to be helpful. I would say in real time, I am helpful because you know, I have publicly shared my journey. My mom, who um, had struggles in her life, having um, adultery in my marriage, and it's kind of like telling everybody somebody owes you $50, but you don't tell them when they give you the money back, right? So you're sharing a piece of your story, me sharing a part of my story, but still being very conscious of it that I'm not getting on the internet every single day talking about that part of my life. But a piece of it enough to say to help someone else. If it's hard for you to hear, turn it off. To help someone to know enough to say, this was hurting me and I sought support. And one, two, three, four, the things I shared with you, those things helped me and let me help you. So in my life, I am Donica. I love having a unique name. I love when people say my name, especially my husband. But um, because I have a twin sister. So I'm always connected and identify as someone else. But when people call my name, that means they know me separate than anything else because I have a twin. In real life, people call me twin. I'm 53, and people still call me twin. Hey, twin, and that's endearment, that's longevity, that's people that's been in my life. So I would say I'm all of those things, but it's not attached to any one thing. It takes resilience to write a book. It takes resilience to have a nonprofit. It takes compassion to share your story with other people and write books in the hopes that your message can help other people. But I'm also vulnerable. Um, it's not always the easiest things, and it's sometimes misunderstood. But it takes my tenacity to say, if it's for you, I'm here. If it's not, move around.
Absolutely. I love that. You know, I could see parts of what my realizations have been through all of you. And I had this memory of, I don't know, I was probably like 3 or 4 years old, maybe my earliest childhood memory of the house we lived in. And there was this brown lazy boy. Remember those? Remember back in the 70s when all the browns and avocados and oranges were in? And I can still see where it was in the house. It was like in the corner of the living room. And I had this memory of myself sitting on this big lazy boy. And I had my legs crossed, I had my Barbie high heels on, and my grandpa's cigarette tray, ashtray was right here. And I pulled out, part of a cigarette and I put it in my mouth. And I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. And tapping into that version of me, and then it sort of all the dots really started connecting together. And there was this aha moment that happened actually about 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago. So we had some things, we're moving, we're selling stuff, we're getting rid of stuff, we're throwing stuff out. And we have this area of our property where my husband did this huge area for bonfires. We've done 1 million bonfires just with our family. We've had 1 million parties that revolve around this bonfire. We have this whole section dedicated to bonfires. And a couple of weeks ago, Jonah asked me why. On a Sunday, my husband's in the bathtub. That's like his happy place. And me and the boys are watching Alone. And I said, you know what? It's like a nice day. There's no wind. I'm going to go out there and light some of the things that we're getting rid of. I'm going to go just light it on fire. And it was just a small thing. We've done massive bonfires, right? So I light it on fire. I was like, it's fine. It's just a couple of things. I come back in the house. We watch an episode of Alone. And this little voice, I could hear Mother Mary like, Monique, go outside. So I walk out there and I'm not even to the bonfire area yet. And I see this bonfire went beyond the bonfire. First time ever. I can see it's just black, singed everywhere. I turn around and I run back to the house. I'm like, boys, come here. You got to see this. And my firstborn, who's more of an adult than I'll ever be, he's just like, Mom, what on earth? So we're walking around seeing if anything's still on fire. And I come back in the house. I didn't bother telling Derek, what was done was done. No need to mess up his relaxing bathtub. And my dad comes out to the property the next day, and him and Derek go out there for the first time. And they were like, what on earth did you do? You almost burned this entire property down, 2 weeks before we're going to sell it, right? And right then it hit me like a lightning bolt. I am a fire. I've always been fiery. I've always been feisty. And there was small town and good family and religion and all these things that taught me to be nice and good and sort of palatable to the majority of the population. And what I realized, that isn't me. I'm a fire. And I can warm some people and I can burn others to a crisp. And it just depends on how it hits you. And I'm deeply committed to that flame, because that is actually what got me through so many things, and what I realized, who I realized I really am at my core. I'm not nice. I'm not the person who's going to tickle your ears. I'm not average. I'm not good. I'm not easy. I am a flame. I am a fire. And it's like, I have so leaned into this, in my social media content and my, even with clients, I just like, what, you and I are going to be, I'm going to burn you to the ground. We're not the right materials for each other. And even this morning, Derek and I had a conversation about that. It's like, I think I can work with this person. I'm going to send them a proposal. This person's a no, because I know who I am right now and who I'm going to continue to be. And it's not at all going to get altered by how others think I need to be or who they expect me to be. And it's an incredibly freeing place. Ladies, I so appreciate you joining me today, for taking the time to share your personal experiences, deep, raw, and real, for what's helped you, for who you've become, and for living your life out so that others get to see examples of what it means, what it actually is. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank
you for being you.
Being on. Yeah. And being that fire, because I love that.
I know. We all do. We all do.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, for those of you who are watching, thank you so much for joining us. Our aim is that you see yourself in us, that you realize you're not alone, and that you find your way through whatever you're navigating, because we want you here. We want your experience. We want your light. We want your gifts. And there's always a place for you here. You belong, even on the days you cannot figure out what that looks like. Until next time, keep sharing your story, because it does help others. Bye.